Here I am again. Time to get a little comfortable. So, I figured in the last part I mentioned that a dominant sense of self should arise from all of this, and I think that's an important question to touch upon because there's a lot of history from before I was born that I got taught at school and other places. And when people try to engineer their environment to their liking, they of course don't want certain things in there, particularly what they consider disagreeable or maybe even disgusting. And that's where people might get rid of those things, and those things can also be other humans. Um, what the cases here can be individual or just someone can make a good case. I don't know about that, but I figure sometimes when someone feels they can make a point, they might do so not just with language and examples, but with a very sharp knife, or maybe something else that could cause a lot of damage. And people who are hidden, like people who wear those invisibility rings, might be hidden away specifically for the purposes of not getting into contact with those sharp edges for whatever reason. So people get the time to find out what's wrong and disgusting or disagreeable about that situation. Now, time's been moving along, and there's a particular point in time where a certain fellow appeared, and they call him Jesus Christ, and apparently they made a calendar surrounding that, and they say we call this 2000 years after, the advent of Mr. Christ, and all before that was before Jesus Christ. Now, before Jesus Christ, there was a group of people in Greece. There was just Greece, which was a bunch of collected city-states, is what I got taught. And they were apparently the folks who had the first some kind of democracy. That's what I was told. It's a big cultural influence. Now there was a dude called Aristotle, and he had a particular thing to say about this point about good and evil. He said everybody wants to be right, but they don't know what is right. They have to know what is right and what is wrong. So ignorance would be the prime evil, the main cause for people being evil, right? But we have to relate that to each other, right? And if there is something out there that is good and not everyone can have it, then it suddenly turns into a sort of a competition, I guess. But I think that it plays into this whole part where Jesus also forgives everyone else for their ignorance, right? I figured he might have been a student of that philosophy as well. But where do those guys get their concept of knowledge from? Well, there was this guy called the Euclidean fellow, the mathematician, who made math apparently all about geometry. And I think that's also a good starting point to talk about the whole philosophy or the whole concept surrounding God and metaphysics and all of the stuff surrounding that. So let's start with the with this flow into the the whole the whole part. Now I can get this. There is different ways to approach this, but I'll just start with this one. I can make a dot on a piece of paper, and now I drew. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a tiny little dot over here, right? Now, if I were to say, how come God is omniscient? It's because it doesn't have anything to relate to, right? And it's complete because it's the only thing here. Now, a person who tells you a story about what's going to happen, or they are reminiscing about the nice parts of something that's going to happen, right? They might be dreamy, they might just be looking at a part of their memory of a particular thing they liked. They don't necessarily know exactly. They don't really pay much attention to all of the bad things that are going on, because the whole place is kind of consecrated and designated for nice things that are supposed to happen. So that's what they focus on, and that's what they're going with, right? And in that space, they're mostly looking at, well, what made it happen. And sometimes that is just the decorations, right? The way people fashion the whole ordeal. So it's all a metaphysical space that gets created. Now, folks talk about a lot of concepts pertaining to this, but those Aristotle himself, he made those 4 elements, right? Now, if I add another dot on this piece of paper, I can connect those dots with a line, and now I have 2 dots, right? It's no longer 1, and I can be above or beneath that. But there's still not much going on over there. However, when I place down a 3rd dot and I connect the lines to that dot, suddenly I have a triangle, and the triangle has space that can be filled with stuff. So it has a space for content. Now those first elements, earth, fire, water and air, they were all made out of triangles, so they all have some kind of content, but they were either pointing down, pertaining to which way they observe the laws of gravity, or pointing upwards, right? So in that sense, that's how far that can go. However, there is also a funny one, pertaining to, of course, the element of fire, which is not really a substance, but it's also an upward motion. That's what it has, but it's actually a process of combustion. But I used to say in a funny enough manner in the past that it was the element of change, right? Because of course, when you draw when you look at matter in particular, and the laws themselves, there's matter, with density, and how it changes, and it does this by temperature, right? Pertaining to, if you just look at Einstein's equation, E is mc squared. Then what is energy made out of? It's made out of mass, and it's made out of light. And mass is then the thing that is not moving, but solid, and light is movement. Now, apparently at 0 Kelvin, when temperature is at absolute 0, all movements should stop. So matter becomes inert, all molecules stop vibrating, and nothing changes anymore, apparently. That's how I look at it. And yeah, this is actually the start of all the metaphysical spaces, right? And these kind of things, they play into your memory as well, because you only have 2 eyes, but you can use it to orient yourself around space. Now your memory is the 3rd one, so when you move from one spot to the other, you can relate it back to where you previously were. So now you also have not only that, but also all your spatial perceptions are in those 3 points, essentially. I mean, You can make it more complicated, I guess, but you can do that with any kind of discipline you want to get into, maybe. Um, and there are more senses, of course, for you to relate to, but this is mostly just the parts that go into the observation of, you know, spatial dimensions and such. Touch and things, they all combine in this weird way. And then you learn how to imagine and to recall because you've been to many places, and you can make a complex geometry, you know. But this is a good start, I think, for people to start with connecting the dots. And yeah, I got a little iced tea. A little bit of iced tea. Now there's another one, of course, which doesn't have, you can say it's all dots or there's no dots, but there's, of course, there's time. And the one that everyone fits in is the circle, right? And everywhere, and most people know that that the circle doesn't have any corners. So, they made a clock out of it, and and there's some funny things in there, you know. When you get that, you suddenly get all these manifestations of like when you start seeing circles there, you start seeing them everywhere. I guess that's everything that you can't get a hook on starts becoming a somewhat of a circle that you can't get hooked on, or can't get stuck, I guess. Which is why I think the swastika also has that hooked cross on it, because people are just getting dragged along, you know, by some jagged thing. Uh, but maybe I'll hear another perspective on that someday. I don't really know what folks are getting dragged along, but probably not the right way that didn't cause them to get exterminated, because they're just saying, oh yes, I'll just go with all the rest of these people to the place where I get gassed or something. That's the official story anyway. But I don't know if all socialist apartments have that function, right? But it maybe would light a fire under someone's ass if they did find out that, you know, they'll think of new tricks to motivate those people who might be just be sitting on the sitting around all day and being, quite frankly, not very agreeable, and not very approachable, and kind of what do you say it, unsociable or disgusting. But you know, there's also places where people just don't create those opportunities for you, right? You have to go find them, and not a lot of people are all that inquisitive, I figure, on some of these subjects, you know. And why would you be? Because there's a fucking to be had, isn't it? So why don't you go and get that? Why don't you go and get that? Now, of course, there's interest groups as well. I don't always know. I'm not always privy to what they want. So rarely. And those might not care about individual needs always either. But you know, this time thingy, they'll they'll get someone or something on that if you aren't aware of it, because I don't know how much folks want to come across, or if there's any value in coming across in a certain point. But you know, I read this part in Slaughterhouse-Five about this theft of clocks, right? Where there's a German soldier, or not a German soldier, a soldier who just um, came along carrying uh, with a whole cart full of clocks. And then you figure like, well, what is it that you are stealing when you steal time? And that's, well, you just steal the chronology, and that's kind of important to sense making, because then you can just say, well, this is what happened then, this is what happened then, and now I can account for it, right? So the um, the um, the thing is, if you want to have a clear picture of things, right, you also want to know in which um, the sequence of events, basically, how it came to pass and why some things came to pass that way. And that requires not just always just a keen eye, but also knowledge that people might not know, because knowing which consequences you are going to deal with is um, sometimes dependent on things that you only find out after. And the people who do know might just already be aware of what's going to happen, and that's where their disgust and disagreeableness comes from. And if they then don't tell you that, right, we'll everything just disappears in this black hole of ignorance where everyone gets exactly the chance to berate each other for their disagreeableness. So and that might behoove someone as well, right? And it kind of depends on what's riding on it for them, and how used they are to making sharp points, or had to make sharp points, because of course, because of the environment that they are living in, where people obviously deal with a lot of sharp points. I mean, I don't know if that's real, because I've only seen it on video, and I don't know if those videos are always, contextually accurate. But I figure they have to get the images from somewhere, and I don't know specifically how much people can fabricate using modern technology. And there are things to consider, because they make it. And why do they make it? No, do they make it to scare you? Do they make it to make you run for the hills, seeing what is the next train out of here, right? Because when you are what did they say? One of those Jews complaining to the wall. What's the wall going to say? And then you find out why people maybe draw gravity on walls, right? And then you can wonder if they even try to communicate, and who they might be talking to when they are talking to the wall, right? And there's another thing, of course, which is playing into the generation of behaviors, right? Now this is not a discipline I am quite privy to, but of course everyone tells you that light is something that's reflected off surfaces. However, black and white apparently are not colors. White reflects all colors and black absorbs all colors. Now if I shine a light on the back of something like this, and there would be a shape protruding through the image, then like in the case of a silhouette, there's a shape that gets reverse absorbed, right? This thing what used to be a human is now actually something not that gets absorbed, but the shape gets pronounced into the darkness itself. And how this affects behavior or perception is not exactly clear to me, or if that is something that people can get a proper grasp on. But it's a funny thing that also messes with this E is MC squared, because you know this you know, this light speed is, of course, they say it's the fastest, right? So, well, if you want to encapsulate someone and make them invisible, you and you want to keep doing that, you have to be faster than whoever's in there, right? So so the question is, like, how much can people know what is born from this? And well, I reflected on some of these manifestations in my own life and upbringing, but and there are some peculiarities that I can relate some of my behavior to, but it's not really all too clear. It's kind of messy. So I guess that's it for this video. That's it for tonight. It's Christmas after all. I'll go and play a game or something.